Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, and we've created a platform to help alumni network and connect with their various alumni groups, whether it be college alumni, whether it be athletes, could be business alumni associations, but just giving them a place to help each other out. But this show is all about talking about athletes transitioning out of sports. And it's a major issue today between mental health and financial literacy. We interview former collegiate and professional athletes and talk about their journey. And the idea is to teach and inspire athletes that there is, in fact, life after sports. Today, we have Kathy Judson. How you doing, Kathy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So Kathy, kind of near and dear to my heart because I was a runner, and we always talk about Kathy was a runner. She also did some cycling and a triathlete, which I have not got into that. We can talk about that later. A little bit rough there, but she went to Colorado State. Ultimately, she got her master's at Colorado. And once she was done in school, she was still continuing to be a professional triathlete. And then ultimately, she transitioned to being a pharmacist, which she is today. So, Kathy, talk a little bit about playing sports or being involved in sports growing up and how that shaped you leading up into, say, college.
Well, where I grew up in Southern Colorado, there weren't very many opportunities for girls to do anything. Running was one of them. So I latched onto that because I couldn't play volleyball in the fall. So I did running, and that was kind of became my niche. I did play basketball, and that was right at the era where women had just gotten the ability to play full court basketball. We had just transitioned out of playing half court, and I don't even know how that existed, but it did. So I was very thankful and that I was able to play full court basketball and that I was able to run. I was very unique in running because nobody wanted to do endurance running where I grew up. So I'd be out on my little dirt roads along the ditch banks and just running and enjoying nature and just having a great time. And people would ask me, how do you do that? And I'd just be like, I just put one foot in front of the other for 6 to 8 miles and just have a great time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as a runner too, it just, I guess the one thing from running, actually Colorado too, I'm sure it's just that mental toughness, because it's hard. And a lot of people don't think of running as a team sport, and it is. It's both an individual and a team sport. And right. I mean, I'm sure you had the same kind of love for it that I had, just having that team camaraderie and all that. But ultimately, you're just, it defines you as a runner and some of the toughness that takes to be a distance runner. And imagine, especially a triathlete as well.
Well, the distance running where I grew up in high school, for track, we got to go out after school, obviously, but that's when the wind always started blowing. So I used to run with the boys because they had longer distances. So I'd go out with them, and I'd usually come in way ahead of them because they'd stop in ditch banks. But I was dedicated and continued to do my run, and we'd come back and literally wipe the grit off of our teeth from running into the headwinds and all the sand blowing. So that prepared me for life later on as an athlete and in life in general. Just sometimes you just got to push through hard stuff.
Yeah,
it was so cold sometimes, so cold. You were just bearing down and just getting into your mindset to just finish up because then you could be warm.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I grew up in New Jersey. We had some cold weather too. I remember running some of that, but I'm sure it was probably a lot worse running up in the mountains or that at least that high of an altitude. So I always ask people, did you ever dream of being a professional athlete, which ultimately you were, but did you dream about that? And if so, what sport?
I started dreaming of becoming an Olympian when I was 12 years old, because at that point, that's the highest that women could go. And I had a couple of coaches. Coach V Hill at Adams State was renowned. He's remained renowned across the running community forever. I mean, a few years ago, he was still coaching at the age of 90. So I had him, and yeah, and he was still coaching some really great athletes. So I had him just down the road, and I got to meet an Olympian who ran in Mexico City. So that inspired me. And I had a friend that lived with our family for a bit that was an athletic trainer and thought that I had the ability to at least go for it and try. So I started doing that. Really started basically getting off the couch and watching sports to actually participating in sports. And so that was all just a great journey. Just
Yeah,
dreaming of being in the Olympics. And then one time I was one of the Olympics, I think when Mary Decker Slaney first ran when she was very young. I mean, we were the same age and she's doing the 800. And I'm like, I want to be there. I want to be there. And then a few years later in college, I get to run against Mary Decker Slaney. Of course, I get obliterated, but
that's when you're like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there.
no, I still wanted to be there.
Yeah.
It's just I quickly realized my genetics didn't quite meet Joan Benoit and Mary Decker Slaney.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because I always joke around. I say, I want to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, the talent wasn't there, so I'm doing what I do today. Let's fast forward to college, and we talk about transitioning out of sports, and as I said, it is a major issue. When you were there back in college, and both of us went to school a while back, but was there education on what's next for athletes, and not only just from what you saw from running, but if you happen to see anything from any of the other sports, football, basketball, baseball, was there any kind of thing going on in the school where they tried to work with athletes to prepare them?
No, there was nothing available for that. I mean, everybody had their degrees, and the women that I was with, we all had some pretty solid career choices that we selected, and I think it was just the peer group that I was in. But I would observe like the baseball players or the wrestlers, and I kind of felt kind of bad because they were just in school at CSU just to run or just to play ball
Right.
or wrestle, and they didn't really have anything after that they were going to go into. And I didn't know what to do, obviously, but I kind of felt bad that. And then when I got into cycling, we women knew that because we weren't making money racing pro, we knew that we had to have something to go back on. So there were a lot of doctors in our peloton. There were a lot of people with masters, a lot of people choosing professional careers.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the consensus, because I've talked to other female athletes, and unfortunately, just the lack of opportunities back then, and even now, I mean, there's definitely disparity in female sports versus male sports, and just the opportunities with like WNBA and things like that. But I think that probably, to your point, kind of grounded female athletes more to being like, okay, I got to have my next plan. And I guess unfortunately for some of the male athletes, depending on what sport or how good they were, would do that. Because like for me, for example, I mean, I was a good runner, but I mean, I wasn't, I had no aspirations of being Olympics. I wasn't that good, good enough. I mean, it was good enough to run, but not in college. And then I got hurt, and it was easy for me to transition out. But I can understand some of these other athletes that they live and breathe it every day, and all of a sudden it's over. And like, okay, I'm Joe, the football player, or Bill, the baseball player, Kathy, the triathlete, Rob, the runner, whatever it might be, but they identify themselves as a sport.
Right. And that's one thing, because I was in college at the time we transitioned, Title IX was taking over.
Okay.
So they had to put X number of women's sports compared to the men's sport to try to get rid of some of the disparity. So I watched CSU lose a whole program in wrestling. And I even knew some of the wrestlers, or knew of their families and their situations. I mean, it was really sad because they were there just to wrestle.
Right.
So when the program demolished, they lost their identity. They lost a lot. Some of them didn't ever recover. I mean, they just didn't recover. They kind of just went into the abyss. And it was really a sad commentary.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's why I think today schools are making, trying to make more of an effort, but I think it's still, there's a lot of need out there. Like one of the things that we're doing at Alumni Direct is we're, working with, and kind of parallel to this podcast, is working with different athletes or resources in mental health and financial literacy and career and all that. And we want to make an impact, like helping the schools out, kind of become a partner extension of them to give that not only to the current athletes, but also to the alumni athletes who in a lot of cases get forgotten unless you're like some superstar.
Right. I can see such a need for that. Just I mean, not, I don't know. I mean, the financial dollars have changed, but I don't know whether, like, there's definitely a need for what you're doing.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's talk a little bit about alumni connections. And so when I'm going to take it two parts. One, when you were at school, did you see an alumni presence amongst athletes? And I don't mean like the golf tournaments or just coming back for homecoming, but I mean actually interacting with the athletes, maybe even in your case with, other maybe runners coming back and talking to the athletes about, again, life after sports or, kind of encouraging mentoring.
No, I didn't see any of that. Um, I didn't see any of that in college. Um, Thankfully, by the time I graduated to cycling on the pro level. Um, there was definitely more of a community that I can see college needs, because at least in cycling, I had mentors. I had I had this awesome lady, Bunky Benkaitis Davis, who was an Olympian, really, really strong, but she gave back to us and helped. There was a group of three of us, and she really helped try to raise us up to a level. But she had her doctorate in chemical engineering. So, well, we always had that bar to go up to with Bunky. And um, she was a great mentor, and I've tried to follow in her footsteps, giving back to the high school mountain bike league, and just, trying to always realize that, yeah, there's always the next level,
Right.
and you can make it a lifestyle, and but it's not always going to be your life.
Right. Yeah, and that's great, because that's another thing. As I mentioned, like with you think of the alumni communities, it could be a lot. It could be the schools, it could be the athletes. Like we've got an athlete community center, and I think it's important for athletes to know that too, to tap into that alumni base of other athletes that have that same DNA, the same skill set. That whether they went to the same school or not, or even if they're in the same sport, they still have that camaraderie, and they should definitely tap into the alumni. Do you see anything today? School, like let's say Colorado State, you get involved at all in their, or Colorado in their alumni base?
No, I really haven't done that because I haven't really focused on that. I guess as far as that, because my son's in college at Gettysburg, and running for them, I try to get involved with those kids. And in a way, just because of living my life and still being an athlete,
Right.
they kind of they do look up to me, because with the app Strava, a lot of my son's teammates follow me and still see what I do. So knowing that I'm also a mom, I'm a pharmacist, and still an athlete, that's something they can aspire to as well.
Right. No, that's great. And I mean, it comes in a lot of different ways with the mentoring, and I think, alumni in general, like I said, it's important to tap into that base. It's all about relationships. So whether it's, from the college or in other instances, like you're talking about, whether it's as an athlete, alumni, or even just tapping into the kids. I know I got involved in a lot of coaching over the years with my son, and just, you build those relationships that way as well. Talk a little bit about networking. And, I guess, alumni, the two kind of go a little bit hand in hand, we're talking about, but talk about the importance of networking in building the relationships and helping you out in life's journey.
That's the beauty that I'm finding as I've gone on in cycling. The community is still so strong. The people that I raced with at the time of racing pro, we've actually developed a nice community. And when somebody's daughter's dying of cancer, we all rally, really support that individual and the daughter that's currently dying of a long bout with cancer. Recently, I was at the Maryland Classic, a professional bicycle race in Maryland, and I got to network with some guys that I used to race with. I mean, and back when we were racing, it was the guys and the women, but we were all still doing the same thing.
Right.
So it was really cool just networking with them again and talking about women in sports, their journeys. And Ron Keeple said something to me. It's like, I don't even know where my bronze medal from the Olympics is, but it's really not about the medal. It's about the journey to get there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the key, is we all have a journey. And I was just like, that is just so profound. It's not about the day getting the medal and yeah, we got this medal. Yeah, yeah, rah, rah, rah. It's about the journey and the lifestyles we build, the connections we make. And I was just sitting in awe, sitting with a major race promoter in my era, and just talking like we were normal people again. And it was just really, really a nice encounter with all of them, and realizing that, wow, the major races in the United States, there's a nice community of them, and it's from former racers and just people that love cycling. And it was just a really great event to network in and just see where we've all come from and are now aspiring to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, you think about, from a running community, the marathons, and even from a track standpoint, the Penn relays. I mean, there's a lot of events, like you said, that stand out, and it's great to be able to continue to network within those communities. And that's what we talk. One thing is just even the importance of doing it while you're still performing. I talked to one agent, and he just said the best time to network and connect for the athletes is when they're still playing. And unfortunately, a lot of them don't do that because they're just, they're so, ahead in the game, which I understand, but just taking a step back, that just the importance of it, it just becomes a lot easier if you're doing it then, and that will carry through, like, once you're done with that sport.
That's really what I noticed sitting with these two guys is the networking we did was at the stage races where we were all at, because we just have downtime where we could just all connect as people. And then I guess thankfully for Facebook, we can all stay connected with each other's lives. And, like I said, really support each other. I mean, Bunky ended up dying of cancer, but it was just really cool watching the community rally behind her husband and her son and all of her friends. And it's just been really, really nice to know that the networking that we did while we were on the bike in a Peloton, that was still networking, even though it felt like competition, we were still really networking. And I guess that's the beauty of my sport of cycling, is you can network on the bike and off the bike.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I look back to when I was running, and although it was competitive, just remember in high school some of the great relationships we had with other teams. Because we were all, once we got off the track, or once we got off the cross country, there were some pretty cool guys that we would hang out with from other schools that in a sense they're your enemies when you're running against them, but like all good people that once you're not doing it, you've got something in common to talk about. Which is great. So let's talk about transition. So you've gone through, from a sports perspective, two transitions. So you ran in college, and did the triathlons and all that. So talk about when you were done with college, and then I guess that transition into professional sports, and not being in college anymore.
Yes, I graduated from college at CSU, and at that point I was competing professionally as a triathlete, and got married. But in order to continue to be a pro, I needed to work only part-time because triathlons take up so much time. And thankfully my husband at the time was supportive, and we did them together. So that was very helpful. And then I transitioned out of triathlons because of the time factor. It was just took so much time to train. So then I went into cycling full-time pro and did the Olympic trials a couple times, and then went into pharmacy school. So I was able to go to pharmacy school full-time and work and still race at a high level. And obviously very busy, but it was a good transition for me, just because I could still, I could take care of my brain, I could take care of my body, and still have a life.
Yeah, no, that absolutely, for sure. And so then once you, as a professional triathlon, and all the stuff that you're going through that you're just explaining, talk about once that was over, and how you felt, and were there, when you're competing for so long, and now all of a sudden you're not, like, talk about that, and then how it kind of shaped you moving forward.
I transitioned, I think pretty much I transitioned when I got pregnant with my first son. I was 37, and 36, 37, and I knew it was time to transition to a different way of doing it. And it was really hard because back then when I got pregnant, most people of my era just quit altogether. So I was like, no, I need to like show people that you can still compete. It's not going to be at pro level, but you can still compete, and it becomes more of a family affair. So that was kind of my goal, was to kind of set a playing field, which is something I've always kind of done in sports, is just set a standard of where you could start from. So I just didn't worry about the results so much. Yeah, I was still really competitive, and that created conflict in my mind a lot, just because I was like, oh, I could be here. But then and then I looked at my son and went, no, it's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay. And
absolutely.
so the greater gain was my son, and then became sons. And now watching both of them, having taken them to umpteen bike races, and just watching how they've become, having that experience of their mom still competing, but still putting life into them.
Yeah.
It was a hard transition, and I mean, I'm thankful for my journey that I was still able to compete. Just had to notch it down, and that took some time to mind shift, because when you're a pro athlete, as Ned Overend said once, if you want to race at that level, there's got to be something a little askew in your brain, because you have such a drive. I had to figure out what that drive was and kind of turn it off. And it's, it's something I still work on now. I'm kind of doing the transition of, it's a lifestyle, not so I got to compete for a medal. This last weekend was gravel nationals, and I chose not to race because I just didn't want to deal with the mental game that day. I chose to go ride with my alma mater, CU Buffalo Bicycle Classic, and I just went up canyons and just smiled at all the people and waved at all the people. And I mean, I still got as many miles as the day before in a race, but it was just so much more fun to see people smile on a bike. And so that was a happy transition.
Well, that's good. That's good. So what advice do you have? Advice for either college athletes or professional athletes to, when their sport is done, and just things that they can do so that they don't get into that spiral that a lot of athletes do.
I think just have a lot of grace with yourself and know who you are. Learn to have an identity outside of sports, that you're more than just competing, that you're more than just, oh, I'm a basketball player, or I'm a runner, or I'm a cyclist. That there's so much more to who you are than what you do. It's a you and not what you do. And just to gain a lot of, just find new things, or even stay within what you're at. I mean, each sport's different, but you can always, like with the Alumni Direct, you can always give back to your alma mater. You can always give back to your sport, which still keeps you involved and allows your brain to kind of transition out of the highly self-focused athlete to being a more giving person. Generosity. That was a big word I heard yesterday, was being generous, and being generous with your time to others.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's a lot of people sometimes they go in all about asking and wanting things for themselves. But I think if you have that more, like you said, that spirit of generosity and giving, I think goes a long way with people towards wanting to help you also. So that's great advice. And I mean, I did definitely, everybody, good nuggets there that will definitely break out into separate little clips to share with other athletes and helping them. So once you were done, ultimately, you said you went back to school, and now you're a pharmacist. So talk a little bit about that, and what you're doing today, with the pharmacy.
I'm in pharmacy. I'm still remaining a pharmacist behind the bench, because when I had my son, I didn't realize if I stepped out of hospital pharmacy, I would not be able to get back in. So I have been a retail pharmacist for a long time. And now I'm kind of transitioning. One of my sons is a counselor for kids. So I'm realizing that it would be helpful if he had a resource where he could send parents and kids to counsel. And at a free or reduced price. My youngest son is going to be wants to be a brain surgeon. So once again, I'm like, oh wow, more counseling. So I'm kind of doing another life transition and creating a business and in counseling to also augment my pharmacy degree so I can offer counseling for people with their medications, but primarily for mental health, because that's always been something that I've been very interested in, just because I've seen so many challenges throughout the years with athletes. And
Yeah, no, I'll tell you what, I know that, and I've talked to other people about this. Somebody at one point said, watch The Weight of Gold. Have you seen that one, the documentary?
no,
It's
but I
it's
will.
yeah, it's on HBO Max, and it was narrated by Michael Phelps, and the Apollo Ono, like a bunch of Olympic athletes were on there, well-known athletes. Shaun White, I think, was on there too. But it just talks about just the challenges of the Olympians. It's sad. I mean, to go through, and and you were, like you said, on that path of wanting to do that, to work your whole life for maybe one moment of whether it's a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it might be. And again, every 4 years, it's just, there's a lot of challenges and a lot of mental health issues with Olympians. And I think there's more of a need, like you're talking about, is the counseling and things like that people need that. And there's not enough people to go around to help. So, I mean, there's this, I think a combination of alternative medicines and things, not medicines, but there's a lot of things out there I think can help people out. And I encourage people to, seek it out. I mean, it's just, people want to help, and just people that need it should definitely seek it out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have many friends that are Olympians, and just watching their transitions has been interesting. I mean, I literally sat with an Olympian 2 weeks ago, and knowing his journey, and knowing some of the other journeys of his teammates, there's just a lot of heartache in it.
Yeah.
Just because there's not always the preparation for
Right.
that part of life.
Right. And I think that's what we're all trying to do, is to help that. And we encourage people to watch this podcast or listen to it across the different avenues, because again, I think there's definitely nuggets out of everyone. I mean, we talked to a lot of great people like yourself, and just their journeys. And like I said, it's all about teaching, inspiring athletes that there are things they could do after sport. So tell us where people can find you today.
Well, my book's about to come out,
There you
Navigating the
go.
Race Within. And I'll be having a website. I'm creating a business called healthyhorizonsnow.com. And I am on Facebook and Instagram under Kathy Lynn. And you can find me because I'm riding my bike on Mount Evans. So that's
Yeah,
that's
and
where to find me right now.
Yeah, and we'll put all that in the show notes. And kudos to you to do a book. Everybody keeps telling me it's like that's the big challenge. Everybody says you got to write a book, and for me too. Like, hopefully your book will be on Audible at some point, because it's hard for me to sit down and read. I got so much going on. But when I do get out to run every day or walk, it's nice to have something to listen to on Audible.
Yeah, that's what I do too. YouTube is my friend, podcasts are my friend, because just being out, I can listen. I listened to Kara Goucher's book about her journey with Nike while I was riding my bike up Berthoud Pass. So, it's a great opportunity to use your time wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can find us at alumnidirect.com. And then, like I said, you can follow us on our YouTube channel for the show Athletes and Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. We're also across Instagram and Twitter, or X, I should say, the new one. But anyway, this has been great, Kathy. We really enjoyed speaking with you, and looking forward to making an impact with a lot of athletes out there.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. It was a true pleasure.